Welcome everyone to another of our sessions on AI and archival practice, a series of videos produced under the auspices of the ICA Program Commission and with the very generous support of the National Library and Archives of the UAE. And for this session, very pleased to be joined by a member of the ICA team on this project, Moses Rockenbach. Moses, good to have you with us.
Hi, David.
Look, today for this session, we're going to focus on using AI for preservation of archives. And for this session, we're going to first listen to actually three interviews that we've conducted on this topic. The first one is with Dr. Hamad Al Mutairi, who's the manager of the Archives Department in the National Library and Archives of the UAE. After that, we're going to hear from Yaso Arumugam, who is the former CEO and Chief Digital Officer of the National Archives of Australia, for her perspectives on AI and preservation. And then immediately after that, we'll move to hearing from Babak Hamidzadeh and a conversation with Babak and with Luisa Esteve Casillas, a member of our project team as well. Babak is a member of or a collaborator, as are you, Moses. He's a collaborator in the InterPares Trust project, and he had some very interesting perspectives on AI and preservation. So look, let's just have a listen to those three conversations, and then perhaps, Moses, you and I can just reflect on what we've learned from those three conversations. All right, let's listen to them. Well, welcome to Hamad Al Mutairi to our session, one of our discussions on artificial intelligence and its implications for archives and archival practice. Hamad, it's a great pleasure to be talking with you. You are the head of the Archives Department. In many ways, you are the chief archivist of the United Arab Emirates. And I know with a very particular interest in AI and quite an ambitious program and a vision for the National Library and Archives of the UAE. And I should say, in full declaration here, I have the pleasure of working with you right now on an ongoing basis, and it's been a great professional privilege of mine to do that. But now we've got that out of the way, let's perhaps kick off with our discussion about AI. And Hamad, before we jump into the detail of administration of archives and AI, UAE has got a particularly unique position on AI, I think, at the moment. Can you perhaps give us some insights into how AI is being regarded as a national priority in the UAE?
Sure. First of all, thank you, David, for this opportunity for sharing and exchanging knowledge about, archives, digital preservation, and how to deploy AI in this field. If I will try to give you a background about, how we thought about the technology in general first in the UAE and how we came up and built this knowledge, built the right infrastructure for us to start implementing and deploying different type of technologies. We started in 1999 in the UAE, thinking about how to automate the services, how to use the technology, how to use the websites, how to use, those type of, at that time was basic technologies. And UAE decided to have three waves of improvement, let's say. We wanted to achieve 100% of government services to be provided electronically, throughout the websites and etc. And then we had the second wave where we had to move to mobile services. So how to provide services from government organizations at any time from anywhere. And then we started seeing also how to implement those new trendy cognitive technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and other types of technologies. And we in the UAE decided to also establish a set of frameworks to help us to identify what are the requirements to provide this environment, to provide the right support to different sectors within the government of the United Arab Emirates. we also started thinking about appointing a minister responsible for this, this journey, and to make sure that we have the right strategies in place. So we have a national strategy for AI, and we as National Library and Archives, we have also to be aligned with this national priority. Um, we didn't stop there. Even recently, the government decided also to have a representative from each government organization to be responsible to implement artificial intelligence in their field. So that's why we have also aligned our plans and strategies based on those requirements. So to us, it's a mandatory thing, and uh, I might also need to highlight this. I was honored yesterday to speak to the president, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the president of UAE, and he was focusing on the technology and especially AI, um, and he also focused on how to use the technology to process the data and how to make sure that we have the right technology in place um, to provide the knowledge societies and the citizens with trusted information.
Well, I can't imagine having a better moment than to talk to you, Hamad, about archives and AI. It's very few people that we're talking to have just yesterday met the president of the nation and had a discussion with the head of state about what you are doing at the archives about AI. So I imagine right now this is at the front of your mind. So I'm glad we've chosen this moment. And congratulations, by the way, on your advocacy for archives at such the peak level of government. So, well, then let's try and bring you down to earth, then, then Ahmad. I mean, so given that national priority, and it was very good to hear from you to talk about the priority that has been given at the national level on AI. So that imposes very particular responsibilities and obligations on you to run the National Archives in support of those priorities. So bring us a bit closer then to your institution. How are these national policies bearing down on what you are doing in the National Archives to adopt and exploit the positive benefits of AI?
Yeah, so we started by aligning our strategies and plans with the national, let's say, priorities and frameworks and strategies, and to be able to understand the requirement in this field, in the records management and archives management field. We had to investigate the possibility where can the artificial intelligence and machine learning can support the National Library and Archives and the processes. We started by thinking about the framework, the general, normal, traditional way of dealing with the archives, the main concepts, let's say, of records management, where we need to start by, thinking about the acquisition of the documents or the archives and how to preserve them and how to make sure that we process them in the right way and how to provide access as, the ultimate goal of any national archives, to think about the best way to provide the right sources and information and data and records to our stakeholders. And from there, we decided to think about what type of technology, what type of AI utilities can support in those processes. For example, how to decide on what to keep in terms of appraisal, how to select those documents to keep them according to our also, for example, by law, our legislation. We have a criteria within our bylaw that also allow us to select documents, for example, if it has any national value. And we start thinking on how to automate and how to optimize also the power of technology and especially AI to help us process this huge amount of data that we are gathering and acquiring from government organizations, and to decide how to keep them, for how long to keep them, and how to process them. So there are different ways that we can see and anticipate that AI will and actually are supporting us at the moment. For example, also in processing data, there are so many ways and approaches to process data to help us also in cataloging, for example. We've seen the support and the power of the OCRing technology. We also introduced machine learning to enhance the result of OCR. So the system will scan the document and will understand and will capture actually the text. And it will also enhance the cataloging by auto-index those records in the systems. We've seen also an implementation here in our field. We started implementing face recognition and object recognition. And we also try to link different type of technologies, such as machine learning, and also how to find relationships between documents and different types of records, such as photographs, video, etc. And we believe that the experience of the stakeholders, especially the researchers, will or became actually much more easier. It's more efficient. It's more now reliable. And we see that the content that was created by AI, based on the records that we have, supported and enhanced the overall experience dealing with records.
See, that's very interesting, because there's a lot of uncertainty, isn't there, still, on the accuracy and the veracity of these tools. But your experience has been quite a positive one, that it's really supported and done a good job on that. So what's your secret, Hamad? I mean, how did you oversee the process, or did you get expert help? I mean, how do you think you succeeded in having such a positive result?
Yeah. Actually, it's a combination of so many methods and techniques. So, as you know, there are so many ways to implement AI. For example, you can start by observing the technology, observing the systems and the behavior of the AI utilities. So we started by observing and trying to feed the system about the right patterns, for example, how to select documents, how to appraise document, how to also sometimes use the system to decide on, for example, sensitivity, what to publish, what to, and there are so many ways to do that. As you know, David, there are supervised and unsupervised methods to deal with that. We took the approach of the supervised, where we also engaged the archivist to make sure that we feed the system with the right patterns, the right expectation. And this also helped us to raise the maturity level of the accuracy. At the beginning, we started by, I believe, around 60 to 70% accuracy. But we see now the improvement, the curve is going up. We can see that the results of the technology is becoming more accurate than the past. And we are seeing that this curve is going up. But the more we engage, the more we support the machine, it will also produce better and effective results.
So tell me then, because some of our viewers across the professional community watching this will have, not so many resources available to them. And this is another thing we've been talking about in this series of conversations. Is AI simply available to the wealthy institutions, or can less resourced institutions take advantage of this? It sounds to me like you did invest quite a bit of your people's time in doing that supervised process, and using the machine learning technology. Do you think, is there any aspect of this technology which is available to the less resourced institutions, or does this require a big budget?
I would say it depends, because again, it's an investment. it's an investment not just in the technology, but also in people.
Yes.
We need to start, by educating the archivist about the technology, because we want archivists to drive this journey. We don't want the technology to drive the field. So when we started by providing awareness sessions and training programs to first raise the understanding of this technology, and by that we started thinking about what other things that we need to invest. So it's a full package. I would say that AI will require some sort of financial support and budget, but also there are available technologies or available, let's say, utilities uh, that national archives around the world can use, and also enhance, even if it is an open source, let's say, technology. There are different ways. We need also to engage sometimes with the big vendors to also implement ready-made solutions. But I would say that we can start small. We can implement something on on a smaller scale, and then, but at the same time, we need to think about the expansion. We need to think about the scalability of the system that we need to build, because as we said, it's a combination of technologies. We need to think about, we need to zoom out and think about what is the ultimate goal, what do we want to achieve. And if I will go a step back, thinking about the strategy, we need to make sure that what we need actually is highlighted, and it's very clearly mentioned in the strategies and in the plan, so we can also achieve this target. But as I said, it might be something very expensive, and it might be also something that we can start small and we can start adopting slowly. And there are so many initiatives. Maybe we can work together. Like, for example, we can think about partnership with different national archives around the world, thinking about how to benefit from the experiences.
I think it's a very good idea, that there must be some opportunities for collaboration and sharing across our community here. In some of our conversations, we've talked about this as well, and we've heard that, well, every archives has its own particularities about its collection, its own sensitivities, and so it's not necessarily easy for you, for example, to get all of your training, your supervised, of the training data that you've approved and give it to another country or another archives, because it will have certain sensitivities, etc. But I like what you're saying, Hamad. Over and above that, there are experiences that we've gathered, which we should be able to share and use as a basis of collaboration. So what about the other thing that I'm interested in exploring is, as you've seen the whole nation of the United Arab Emirates take up AI, especially across the government sector, has that changed your thinking about what sort of records you need to be capturing and the record keeping practices that you need to encourage across the rest of government?
Yeah. So, before answering this question, I also thought of sharing this, because we need also to capture the the um, the improvement of AI, because one day researchers will be interested also to understand how, for example, UAE, or in general in this field of records management and archives management field, how did we deploy this technology? So we need also to make sure that we preserve the improvement of AI solutions within this field. Dealing with government organization and different stakeholders, we realize that what we see now, that people are more interested in the audiovisual records. So this actually also came to our mind when we started, thinking about policies and plans to make sure that we provide the right information to the right segment. So, for example, for general public, we provide more audiovisual records. They are more interested in, for example, also social media, for example, archives. And for, let's say, advanced researchers, or let's say PhD students, or, postgraduates, they will be interested in more, detailed about, documents. So this also helped us to shape our strategies and shape our implementation of AI within this field.
So, Hamad, can we turn for a moment to a bit more specifically the area of preservation, in particular digital preservation, which I know is a large part of your concern, your operation. What sort of thoughts are you having to the possible use of AI to make digital preservation more effective, more efficient?
This is very interesting, David, question, because archives can play a major role on, sustainability, on, so many also national priorities about, how to make sure that um, we protect and we use the right technologies for us to eliminate any climate or any issues that can affect the environment overall. So we started also thinking internally here about how technology can help us to decide what to keep and what to dispose.
Mhm.
We also started this practice here internally to decide, for example, if we have documents with a very high rate of retrieval, then we will keep it on state-of-the-art storage devices. And if those records are not in use and not there are no huge amount of requests on those records, then we can shift them automatically into a lower, let's say, storage devices. We also start thinking about achieving net zero, strategies, and how even the right records management systems can also support those, priorities. If we have, for example, not just the traditional retention policies, but it's a overall collaboration which will start from the government agencies deciding if they have the right retention policies, and then how to move those records between different agencies, because at the end it will be centralized here at the National Library and Archives. So even we're working now on a national strategy, digital preservation strategy, and we are thinking also to publish this and to issue this strategy next year. So we try to make sure that this strategy will solve not just the main objective, which is of course the digital preservation, but at the same time it will also help us to achieve other goals indirectly by having the right digital preservation strategies.
Hamad, you're in quite a relatively unique position where you are, as I said earlier, you're the chief archivist for the nation. And AI, we often talk about AI as if it were just a piece of technology here, a bit of hardware there, machine learning, generative AI, etc. In your position, you have to look strategically across your organization and many years into the future. Can you share with us a bit about, are you taking a strategic approach to AI? And can you just talk us through a little bit about what is your strategic approach to the take-up of artificial intelligence?
Sure. David, this is actually a great question because I always ask myself this question: what is the purpose of the archives? We need to serve the nation. We need to serve, even sometimes we think about a collective memory, that we need to share, we need to provide to our stakeholders and clients. And nowadays, when we say stakeholders and clients, we don't just mean the internal or the nation level. It's also international level. We are dealing with everyone. So it's a collective memory. So what I think we need to think about is to how to provide those information again using AI to support, for example, not just the field of records management as we discussed previously. Yes, we need to make sure that we utilize the power of technology to process data, but also we need to think about how this framework can support, for example, education in general. So how to engage later on students in school, in universities, to use the benefit of technology and at the same time improve it. So they will be experimenting those technologies and also improving not just that content. So they might be students interested in, for example, the history and the content itself, and they will start improving this way or this realm. And there will be some other people or students will be interested to enhance the technology itself, and they will participate in this environment overall. We also think about supporting the cultural sector overall. So Ministry of Culture of UAE and Ministry of Education, as we mentioned. And we are also thinking, for example, about how AI can also process data, for example, healthcare sector data, to provide us with facts that we can also provide it to Ministry of Health, where we can see the great value of AI in processing historical archives, historical data, and provide the nation with those new content that will help us overall to improve the government services, the government, initiatives, priorities, and also to share the experience with the knowledge societies in the world.
Look, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful perspective, Hamad. It's been such a pleasure to be able to have this chat with you and for you to share your insights and your knowledge and your experience with us. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to our sessions on AI and archival practice. And for this discussion, I'm very pleased to be joined by my good friend, Yaso Arumugam. Yaso is formerly the CIO and Chief Digital Officer at the National Archives of Australia and is now a senior consultant with BlueRydge. Yaso, thanks very much for joining us. It's great to have you.
Thank you, David, and always a pleasure to work with you.
That's great. So let's kick off the conversation then. So as you know, we're talking about AI and archival practice. It's a huge topic. There's so much hype around the world about AI. Can you sort of make it a little bit more relevant for the archivists and records managers watching this? Where do you think the big impacts of AI are going to be across the spectrum of archival practice?
Thank you, David. And that's a very good opening question. And yes, people have been talking about AI for years, decades. But I think in the last 1 to 2 years, it's actually, if you look at the Gartner cycle, like generative AI is at the top of that hype cycle, that peak at the moment. It's because it's easily available, it's easily accessible, and it's easily it's affordable as well. And if you look at Australia, now government has created an AI framework, but I think the word in there that I pick is, they say in government, it needs to be a trusted AI platform. So I think the word trust resonates very closely with archives, because, archival information has to be trusted. And David, you used this term before, chain of custody. We want to make sure when we engage and use AI, whether it's at identifying archival resources, whether it's at preservation, or whether it's about making, information accessible, that the archival institutions come across as providing, trusted data. So if we look at, if you don't mind, if I start with identifying archival resources, it's a great opportunity for archival institutions because they get to work with, agencies, departments, institutions that are collecting. And they are looking at how do they use AI. So archivists get an opportunity to work with a number of departments and are exposed to a number of AI technologies. And what's important is not to miss that opportunity, because it's a change. It's change from a record being a document or an object that's you can actually easily identify or resonate with. AI is a bit more complex with it. So any information used, any algorithm used, and then any information that comes out of AI that's going to form a decision or a policy or something that's going to be of interest that needs to be archived, that whole chain of how that is trusted needs to be looked at. And that is pretty complex. The thing is, if archival institutions don't engage now, you're going to be left with a lot of AI-generated information, and you're going to see the outputs, but how do you ensure that you got that chain of custody of, that trust chain of how did that information come to be and how was it used? And that's really important. So that's at the, identifying archival information. And then you can use AI because, we've heard data is going to grow. I saw one stat that said by next year, it's going to be 180 zettabytes of data across the internet and the world. So humanly, in institutions that are collecting the data, I don't think it's humanly possible. And I'm not sure whether all of this data is going to go nicely into a record-keeping system. So how do these institutions use, humans and AI to ensure information of value is captured? Because you can't keep everything. People say, let's keep everything. I don't think that's a solution, and possibly doesn't go against, policies like net zero and things like that, which is trying to reduce carbon emissions. So keeping, 3 copies of digital data, zettabytes, just archival institutions are going to, clash with, other policies such as reducing carbon emissions. So how do you use AI then to ensure that information of value can be trustfully secured? And you do need human input. And that's where we need to make sure that, you put all lens when you create these algorithms and AI. Because if you use one set of, principles and thinking, because AI is all about feeding information, creating algorithms, but there's also a learning process, and making sure when you create those algorithms and you're feeding data, you're looking at the future and what is needed for the future as well. Otherwise, bias can creep in, and because you're not keeping everything, you might lose valuable data. So that's at the front of that whole archival, and then archival process. And then you have digital preservation. So archival institutions are going to have, this volume of data. How do you make sure when it comes in, whether it's context or metadata, how do you make sure that is kept, and how do you use an AI platform to ensure that it's preserved and tagged so that you can be confident formats. It's not word format anymore because you're keeping complex objects, algorithms, you got to start thinking a bit differently because everything is not going to be in an Office format or a PDF format or a, image JPEG format. So how do you keep these kind of formats live into the future? Because you can't emulate all of these platforms either. So that's a complex challenge in a digital world. How do you keep that information live so that it can be accessible in the future? And then the making it accessible, I think that's where, we got really good engagement platforms now, which are using AI. So it's more than just a search engine. Somebody asks a question on, what does archives have on this? You can provide them the search of the records, but you can actually provide a much more informative answer to that question because you've got this repository, this trove of, information that can provide so much value to the person asking the question. So I think there's lots of opportunities. It's about, I think, the word trust. So when we provide information, when you're accessible as well, I think trust is a principle that we need to make sure that we value and consider and make it a core. It needs to be a trusted archive. Sorry, David.
Yeah, and you think of any sort of examples or general examples of how the archivist might be thinking more broadly about the sorts of things that need to be captured and documented as part of the archival record?
Yeah, so I think we broadly have them in those directives, instruments called records authorities that kind of say, okay, this is what defines business value. This is what you need to keep. But it's the second layer below where we kind of expect agencies to translate that and ensure that they are keeping that information. But it's really, I think if we don't work more closely with them, everyone is focused on a record keeping system and thinking anything that goes into a record keeping system might fulfill their archival, obligations. But if you look into most institutions, they have so many different systems that they're using for decision making. And some of them you can export those decisions in the formats that we recognize as, able to digitally preserve. But when you go into the AI world, you're sure you can get the output of an, AI system, and that can come neatly into a PDF or whatever. But is that the only thing you need? Because if you don't understand what information set that it used, and what were the rules that it was asked to use, is the output enough to prove that trust? If it's a Word document, you have a person saying, okay, it's an email from this person, or it's a policy signed off by this person. But with AI, I don't think you can just say it's the output of the AI engine without understanding, okay, how did this AI engine get to this place? What data set did it use? And the challenge is that's going to change. It's not going to be a constant either. So you can't say I captured the data set at the beginning of the year and these are the rules, because AI is learning and changing data sets and continuously monitoring. If you ask ChatGPT a question, 2 days ago and you ask the same question today, there could be a few differences in the answer because it's learned in that time. That's how quickly things are changing. And that with the lens of, okay, what is it of value, what you asked? because you can't afford to keep everything, and you don't have the time, nor do institutions have time to keep every single data set. So how do they, ensure that they're thinking this through and then continuously evolving as well? So you can say we're using AI engine X, and this is how we're going to keep the value of information. But I suggest that should be evaluated much more regularly than, a records authority policy where you can say a Word document or an email from this person or whatever of information needs to go into a record keeping system. So it's very different. And but it's also a great opportunity for archivists to get across AI platforms as well. Previously, it was instructions saying, if you want to transfer to us, this is how the format should be. These are your records authorities. But I think now it's more of working closely a little bit more into that second, realm. Otherwise, it'll be a bit late when they transfer and you see the outputs, but then you don't have any assurance whether that's how that output came about.
I mean, is this a question of more metadata that's going to be created, do you think? Yeah, so because we can't keep the whole training model for ChatGPT every day that somebody uses it to generate, metadata or generate a record or make a decision. But do you think that we can arrive at some sort of system of metadata that allows us to capture the most essential elements of what is a fast-moving environment? Is that how you see this falling out, as being extending our metadata standards, or is there more to it than that?
In my opinion, it's a bit more than that. Metadata will be essential for a decade or so. But as data volumes grow, metadata is only, to use the metadata, you need the whole data set. So you can have the best metadata model. But if you're using it for selection, if you're saying, then that needs to be with that future lens, because what you think, metadata is based on what you think of importance. And what you think of importance now might not be what's of importance. So when you're doing the metadata model, you need to make sure that you're thinking, futuristic. You can, but I think an AI gives you more of a capability of expanding that model as well. So not just using the metadata, it'll be definitely one input, but looking at the metadata and doing like a link analysis and bringing in more links that eat things, because you said these 5 things are important. It kind of creates a relational model on possibly saying, okay, these 5 things are also linked to these 10 things. And that option of giving the human the ability to select those other 10 things as well. So it's definitely one, but it needs a lot of thought. And I think it's good for people to talk and collaborate on this. And the more collaboration you have, I think the more we'll get it right. And that's why metadata models are published on the internet. People have an opportunity to contribute, because you have all of those different, types of thinking coming in. And agencies, should explore the opportunity of collaborating a lot more than just there internally, because that's what will reflect a community. That community thinking of what's important from a metadata model is important.
It really is. It's interesting. It sounds to me like we're still at the beginning of this discussion. We haven't really, as a professional cohort, we haven't really pinned down yet what is that minimum metadata, standard that will be necessary to answer those questions in the future.
Yes, I think we've been very good with search engines and, coming up with metadata models for, search engines, which will be fundamental. So effort's not wasted with all of the years of work done, across all of the communities with metadata standards and, and that's what search engines mainly kind of use. That's a fundamental input, but how do we make sure that that scales up and that's, futuristic is really important. And AI platforms, you hear about AI and there's, machine learning, there's neural networks, which is a bit more complex because it's learning all the time and adjusting. So it's not just a model as such, but it's using that model to then, use its own kind of artificial intelligence to do those connections. So it's quite powerful. And David, I'm not sure whether you remember, oh, sure you remember, but it's one of the National Archives corporate plans that, you signed off as Director General. I think it was 2021, 2023 one, where there was a section of artificial intelligence in that corporate plan. It's published online. I had a look yesterday. And that did list one of those trials that we did with funding from Department of Industry to look at automating complex, determinations of information. So I think the words in the corporate plan, if I remember, was, can we use AI and point into mass storage of archive of information, and then using AI to see whether it can pull out, what information is an archival resource. And that's, 5+ years ago. And at that time, the results didn't give us that trust that it was ready at that stage. And that could be due to a number of factors as well. It could be the directions that we choose, like the records authorities, we choose the data set, a whole lot of things. But as you can see, AI is evolving very quickly. So, it's not something where we can say anymore that it didn't work, a few years ago. So it might not work. Got to keep trying, because the institutions that we work with are engaging with it fully.
And so, yes, so for the people watching these sessions and listening to you talk about the implications of AI and how it is a very fast-moving technology, what advice have you got for early career, mid-career archivists, indeed all archivists and records managers? What advice have you got about maintaining their professional development to make sure they're staying ahead of developments in AI and they're best prepared to take advantage of these emerging technologies?
Thank you, David. And it's an important and interesting question. So at the core, you really need to, your role and the function of, archives, understanding that is important. So because that's the context in which you're working. But then the world and the agencies that you're engaging is also important. So it's important to understand both. So you're in, archival institution, you want to make sure you're identifying, information of important, helping agencies to understand, how do they do that. You want to transfer records, you want to preserve them, and you want to make them accessible. So that's your core. But understanding the world we live in, and that's a bit hard to ignore at the moment for AI, because I'm not sure if you do, probably the word AI is possibly ranking as one of the most common words that are used at the moment. There was an announcement, a government announcement about, a secure cloud for Australia yesterday, and in there as well, the word AI is in there, because there's going to be lots of data coming, so we will need AI. So AI is getting used in every context because people don't have enough resources, and this is one that's going to help them to help assist with that resourcing issue. So it's not about AI taking over. It's about using AI to fix a gap in resourcing. So understanding the context, understanding how you're using it daily, just a bit more aware that you're living in a world where they're using AI consistently. Work more closely with agencies as well to understand how they are, and then staying across as government institutions about the framework that you operate in. So, across, the digital AI framework, the cyber advice for AI, I had to use the word cyber at least once, ethical and responsible use of AI. And you can see in Australia, there's already frameworks and policies coming around all of this, which kind of helps you to understand, okay, this is my framework and it's important. And then when you go and engage with AI, you know what that framework is, you know where your agency is. But that from a skilling perspective, it's almost a continual learning because, having done if you do an AI course, you probably are not going to program an AI engine until your institution is going to use AI for, complex determinations or for using AI. But that might be something you can buy as a service. But selecting, how do you select data sets? How do you ensure algorithms are going to be without, bias? They are going to be from, subject matter expertise. So it's translating almost your policies and your thinking into digital language that helps to implement AI solution is what's important. And the art of the possible with AI, I think the art of the possible is much more broader. So the current constraints of, I can't do this or I can't do that, possibly you can put them to the side and then go, what can I do? And think a bit more broadly would be
That's
my
fantastic. No, that's really good. Thank you so much, Yaso. It's been a fascinating conversation, and it's good to finish off with those pointers on how all of us in the professional community can get engaged with these really exciting developments and be a part of the transformations ahead for our industry. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
I'm very pleased to be joined today by two eminent members of our international community. From within our project team, we have Luis Esteve Casillas, who is a member of the expert group, the ICA expert group on electronic and physical records, and also works in archives within the city of Girona municipality. We're also very, very lucky to be joined by our expert for this discussion, Mr. Babak Hamidzadeh. And welcome Babak, welcome Luis Esteve. Babak has served as interim dean of University of Maryland Libraries and as an associate dean for the digital services and technologies at the University of Maryland Libraries. Prior to that, he's had a very distinguished career. Your CV is too long for me to read out in its entirety, Babak, but I'm also quite relevant to our discussion today. You've also a very preeminent collaborator in the InterPares Trust AI project and have done quite a bit of very relevant research, particularly in the area of preservation. And it's that area of archival preservation, records preservation, that we're very interested in focusing in on for this discussion today. So Babak, maybe if we could start with you, can you introduce us, I suppose, what do you think the major implications of AI technology will be in the field of of preservation of archives?
Okay, thank you. It's very nice to be here, and it's, of course, a topic that is close to my heart, and we've been working as part of the InterPares project on this and for a long time, and now with AI added to the mix, things have gotten more interesting, as you pointed out. So as far as the implications, I would think the implications can be pretty significant in the sense that, you know, how as part of InterPares 2, we've been looking at authenticity of records for so long, and the fact that, you know, records can really have a major impact on how we interpret the past and decide the future and laws and things like that. If you put that next to certain randomness or opaqueness of certain aspects of AI, all of a sudden, you know, you wonder how much you can really trust these AI techniques being applied to your records that, you know, have so much responsibility associated with them in the society and history and laws and things like that. And so that randomness and stochasticity that comes with many, particularly many successful AI techniques these days that are being talked about. When we talk about AI, it's almost like everybody immediately thinks about these days, thinks about machine learning, for example, whereas, you know, AI is much larger than that. But that because a lot of the success has been with machine learning and things like neural networks and supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and things like that. And the fact that that randomness and stochasticity is associated mostly with these techniques, I think the implications are important to look at and know that what you're dealing with, what kind of risks are you taking for what rewards. I think that really is being overlooked a lot, particularly with the hype of AI and so on. And so we're trying to kind of address some of that in our research and our discussions.
All right. And Luis, from your perspective, I mean, how do you see this preservation landscape changing? I mean, what do you think are the principal challenges around preservation that archivists are facing at the moment? And where do you see AI making some inroads into those challenges?
Well, first of all, I think the main problem is the volume and the volume of the information created, and where is this information right now. So in the majority of the cases are in the system, in the offices. So one of the problems is to document this kind of documents there, and probably the contextualize rightly these files, these digital objects. So that means we have a first problem maybe with the metadata of these documents, these records, to be sure that we can trust or not in this metadata, and to check and contrast them with the systems that they produce these records and the processes that they are the result. So probably in a small sets of records, we can manually work with this. But in the current context, it's absolutely impossible. And taking the words of Babak, so I think one of the main issues is the risk of our answer, our capacity to give an answer to this kind of problems, because now it's a problem, but it's an exponential problem for the next future.
And I've been reading a little bit lately about paradata. I mean, can you talk to us about what is paradata, and why do you think this is an important concept that we need to be aware of as we apply more and more artificial intelligence?
Okay, yes. So in fact, continuing that discussion of the implications of use of AI and so on, this is like maybe the perfect time for this question. And the way we started with this was, so we were thinking, first of all, availability of data, if there is any training involved for the AI technique, assuming there is training to be done. Is data available? what kind of sampling of data was done to get the training set, because that really has a major impact on how your algorithm, AI algorithm behaves. And so many other parameters. How much human was involved and how much machine was involved in doing these kind of very large scale type things that Luis Esteve is talking about. Who played what role, who authorized, at what point did the AI technique come into the whole workflow and process? How much authority and autonomy did they have to do? So when we think about all these things and their implications, we thought, okay, who is actually capturing this information and who's preserving this part?
Yes.
In other words, okay, it is preservation. And we said, you know, when I pitched it first to the InterPares project, I said, yes, we're preserving AI, but not for AI's sake, but for what AI is doing to our other stuff. To have, in a sense, keep some kind of an audit trail and accountability associated with AI as it's hopefully not wreaking havoc, but as it's doing things to our documents and records, somebody needs to keep track of what's going on. And then we looked at it and we realized that there's really a lot to be done. And so, and you know, the InterPares project kind of received it well, and they let us kind of work on this project that was at the time a proposal. So, and then this information about AI as it is being applied or as it is operating and functioning, we call the information itself, we refer to as paradata. Right, so paradata would be basically information about the AI and its application and operation. In other words, we're kind of trying to somehow record what this AI is doing and how it is being applied and how it's working on our, say, materials. So, and as such, if you would like me to drill down a little bit, as I mentioned, you know, when you're doing a training on these, let's say you're training an AI technique to recognize trees in images. I'm sorry if I'm kind of simplifying this a little bit. You show it 1 million, first of all, you better have 1 million images of trees and mark those images where the trees are. You keep telling the AI techniques, look, in this picture, here's where the tree is. In this picture, and if you show it in 1 million pictures, all 1,000,000 are pine trees. And then you all of a sudden, and the 1,000,000th and once you say, okay, my AI is trained and I'm going to show it a tree, you show it a maple tree. It's going to say, no, this is not a tree. So it's wrong. So somehow this whole training set, at some point, I know that it's like maybe impossible, impractical, because you create another scale issue, like Luis Esteves was talking about the numbers here in the data and the training set. At some point, somebody should say, what did we train this AI technique on that is now just looking at everything and only knows pine trees so darn well, but you show it another tree and it has no clue what that is, and I say, no, this is not a tree. So it is in these respects when I say implications and uncertainty and the need to do this. So this is the kind of information, the fact that if we could say we showed it 1 million pine trees and marked them as pine tree in these pictures, that would show a lot later on, and people would know how much weight to put on the judgments or decisions that this AI technique is making. So this would be an example of the paradata. What kind of training? How many data points were in the data set that you trained this algorithm with, and so on. And so that was one thing. And of course, what kind of algorithm did you use is very, very important. What kind of parameters, you know, like the model itself, like the architecture, the topology, like call it a neural network as an example, it could be any other thing. What kind of a topology was there? Because, you know, there are these things in AI where you can overtrain a model, then it won't have any flexibility. Just like the pine tree thing, it just knows pine trees. It has zero flexibility to do anything else. And then when you just deviate a little bit, and so all of these things have important implications, and so as such we felt that they should be recorded and captured and preserved alongside the archives.
What sort of practical implication do you think that will have for somebody who is managing preservation of records in a records management field, or indeed managing an archive?
Well, I don't know if I have the right answer, but I can answer with other kind of questions linked to what Babak explained, because I think what Babak explained is essential. So to be able to show our evidence that how the systems work. So I was thinking that we talk a lot about the records management by design or privacy by design. I'm not sure if we should talk about the paradata by design also, because if we have a problem, okay, I have an idea, so I need a plan. So I think paradata needs to be at the beginning of the process, because it's necessary to document and how to document. And this is one of the issues that I think is crucial. So can we expect some kind of good practices or best practices, protocols, standards? Because if not, maybe the application, the real cases of each paradata could be very different, and it could compromise the transparency of all the projects. So one of talking with colleagues, it's a very basic level, but it's what something that appears in the conversation. So, okay, we work now in doing or elaborating the best policies that we are able to do. So until what level we have to be transparent with this kind of paradata. This kind of paradata could affect the security of the systems, because it's not necessary to fail to be paranoid, but it's real that the dark side of the AI is also there, and there are people working with AI for this. So this is a common answer and question. So we can talk, or can we talk about paradata by design? We can expect some standards, and until what level it's necessary to be transparent about this without real problems for our institutions. So it's not an answer, David, I'm sorry, but maybe it could contribute to the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Can I add one thing, because Luis Esteves brought up a very interesting point about doing it at the very beginning. And I immediately realized that doing it at the beginning, or mandating, requiring it to be done at the beginning, has very interesting, can have very interesting results for us. And I thought one of the results could be whether to actually, to make sure you're doing the right thing. You know how when you're recording something, there's all of a sudden some kind of an accountability right there. I'll be careful the next time I'm going to show a million images of pine trees to this algorithm. If I know that I'm going to write down I showed a million pine trees to this algorithm, maybe I'll be a little bit careful or think about, oh, what's going to happen if I show it. So that recording at the beginning. So that's one thing. And another thing that we realized is if there is a third party, a vendor, you hire, let's say, an outside source or a very fancy AI company to come and do this for you, there is a challenge, and it should be in the, like, again, going to that beginning, it should probably be in the contract that you need to give us, even if it's proprietary, we will maybe hope, I don't know what kind of agreement it can be done. We ourselves have not gone down that path and done, detailed studies on this as to what relationship you can strike with your vendors. But at some level, you should require that they dispose and maybe work with you from the beginning about this paradata and how they're trying to train and apply and configure and tune this AI algorithm to then be applied to your the documents and records in your institution. So that beginning thing is very important, and it can be part of a contract if there's a third party involved. Should be, I think.
So it's only to do a small contribution to this. I think the Babak answer was very clear about this, but for the practitioners, it's unavoidable to include in some way all the elements and softwares that we use. So I think this is a gray zone that it was at the beginning of the conversation until what level we have to go down. But we have to be very transparent explaining, and this is another concept, maybe explainability and transparency. So we need to be explainable, but not necessarily absolutely transparent in some way. But it's necessary that people know that what we use to preserve, to capture, to check, for example, metadata with the systems and the provenance to ensure even the traceability. So we use this kind or this model or this solution of artificial intelligence. No? So this is, I think, that for practitioners would be very, very useful that there was something similar to a standard, because when the vendors intervene in this kind of processes, they always can say that, okay, there is a part of the business that it's commercial secret, is our black box. So this is also the other part of the business. So, okay, we are, for example, in our case, we are a public administration. We need to be explainable and, of course, transparent, but not at until the granularity is very important. So it's necessary to define the level. But when a vendor intervenes here and we use some kind of this kind of tools, we need to be sure that, for example, some vendors do the real compliance with some standards of law. So it's only I only say I try move my thoughts and my doubts to you. So it's not a solution. It's only new problems. No?
Look, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time. And I think the people watching this session are going to get an awful lot out of it. So thank you, both of you, very much.
And thank you both. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Babak. Thank you, David.
Well, another really interesting set of discussions on quite a broad range of issues. Moises, what were some of the key takeaways you found in those conversations?
So this topic about the digital preservation and the relation with AI, I think is one of the most important parts we can address. And one thing that worth highlighting is the concept of paradata, in my opinion, because paradata is a new concept and it's related to documenting the AI models, techniques, or data behind this process. So this is the important part, which help ensure also transparency and accountability. So institutions like the Emirates National Library and Archives are setting example by using AI to enhance tasks like cataloging and recognition while prioritizing sustainability and collaboration. So as mentioned, the rise of AI is growing role in society and not just a passing trend. So it's becoming a permanent part of our reality.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and it was good to hear from Babak on that development of paradata, wasn't it? Because it really did, for me, it brought a lot of the threads together. Talking to Hamad, first of all, about the strategic approach and the need to think carefully about why AI is important for the whole strategic purpose of archives. And then with Yaso, who also made some comments about trust. You know, the whole purpose of an archive as well is to make sure it can be trusted. And so how can we work more carefully with the agencies using AI to create records to make sure that all that contextual information has been preserved? And then to hear from Babak, as you say, Moses, to hear from him about, well, here's some research that is being done on that very topic about paradata. So it's very, very interesting. And I think from Luis Esteve as well in that conversation, also was thinking about the practical way of doing paradata by design. So I think Hamad, Yaso, and Luis were all saying at the very beginning of our work, we have to think about building in, you know, paradata, to build in the context. So it was very interesting, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In the really beginning of the projects, we need to include the paradata and to document well all the projects. But this is an important part to have all these principles that we used to have in the archives. Yeah.
No, very interesting. I also thought it was interesting on another topic altogether with Hamad Al Mutairi talking about sustainability and that AI may provide the extra capability for them to manage their storage platforms in a smarter, more responsive way, not only for efficiency, but to consume less energy, to reduce the carbon footprint and to contribute to sustainability. So that was another unexpected, I suppose, benefit of thinking about the power of AI for preservation. So yeah, an interesting set of conversations.
Yeah, those topics are emerging topics. So we start also to explore, to thinking about and how, for example, how can AI help with managing the storage and also the digital preservation over time.
Yeah, excellent. Well, look, thank you very much, Moses. This is quite a long session today with those 3 conversations, and it's been really great to have you with me just to unpack some of them and to summarize it. As always, we'll put a summary of the resources and the links for those 3 conversations up on the screen, and they'll also be available on the YouTube site that we're posting all of these videos. So thank you, Moses. Thank you to Hamad. Thank you to Yaso, Babak, and Luis Esteve for those conversations. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.